All right, here we are back with Dr. Lydia McGrew on the Best Facts Apologetics Answers show. The next question is going to be about undesigned coincidences. This is an absolutely exciting topic. Dr. McGrew has written Hidden in Plain View, a book all about undesigned coincidences. This covers a field of apologetics that some work was done in a few hundred years ago, but then it kind of faded out of view. And many of us hadn't heard anything about it in quite some time. Then Dr. McGrew came out with a book on the topic that was riveting. Dr. McGrew, would you give us a few examples from the Gospels and Acts of some of these undesigned coincidences and why they confirm the reliability of the Gospels?
Sure. So I'd like to explain what an undesigned coincidence is. I call it an incidental interlocking that points to truth. And I can give a brief sort of modern example. So suppose you were interviewing witnesses of a bank robbery, and one witness says, "I noticed when the robber ran away, he tripped as he was going out the door." And then you're interviewing another witness, and that person said, "The robber was ahead of me in line at the teller, and I looked down and I saw that his shoelace was untied." So those two things fit together, right? Like a puzzle piece. Why did he trip when he ran out the door? Because his shoelace was untied. And those two witnesses don't seem to be trying to refer to each other. One doesn't say, "Yeah, oh, I know why he tripped. I bet I know his shoelace was untied." No, they're not referring to each other. They're just each giving separate facts because they're telling the truth. And then reality fits together. And we find this in the Gospels and in Acts, that reality fits together in a natural way, not because the authors are trying to make their stories fit. So an example that I like to give a lot is starts with the Gospel of Matthew. Matthew is he's going to tell about how John the Baptist died. King Herod had him beheaded, and Herod the Tetrarch, I should say. And so he's leading into it, and he's going to do it kind of as a flashback. Jesus' disciples have been going out there and healing, and Jesus has been working miracles, and Herod hears about it, and he says, "This must be John the Baptist risen from the dead." So he's kind of superstitious about that. And then he's going to tell how he beheaded him. And only in Matthew it says he said that to his servants. "This must be John the Baptist risen from the dead." So a thought that could occur to you is, how could Matthew really know what Herod was saying to his servants? Maybe did Matthew really just make this up to make it look more vivid or something like that? But he said it specifically to his servants. That's unique in Matthew, because how could he know? Well, if that was a private conversation, right? How would a Christian know what Herod was saying to his servants? Well, when you go over to the book of Luke, and it's a completely different passage. It's not about Herod. It's not about John the Baptist. It's not about that. It's listing these women who gave money to Jesus' ministry. And it lists several of them, including Mary Magdalene and so forth. And it lists a woman named Joanna, the wife of Chuza, who was Herod's household manager. And then he just goes on, with the list. And that's how he identifies her. So a little bit of conversation between Chuza, Herod's household manager, and his wife. And they apparently were sympathetic to Jesus and followers of Jesus. And that's how this word gets back to the Christian community about what Herod was saying to his servants. So it's real, and it's confirmed by Luke, but in such a very indirect way. It doesn't look like anybody was planning it. So that's a really good example of an undesigned coincidence. If you'd like, I can give one more right here from the Gospels.
I would love that. Yeah, I would love that.
Okay, so we find in the feeding of the 5,000, that is the only miracle, I believe it's the only one that's recorded in all four Gospels. It's kind of unusual. The Gospels sometimes contain miracles that maybe only two of them record, or only one of them does, or three of them do, or something like that. But this one is in all four. And it talks about the people, they're coming toward Jesus and his disciples. He's been with them during the day, but he's coming to the end of the day, and Jesus sees them coming up the mountain. And in John, it says he turned to Philip And he said, "Where shall we buy bread for these to eat?" And he's kind of teasing him because he's not really going to tell them, so okay, go to the store and buy bread, right? But he does ask the question, and he says he himself knew what he would do. But he says, "Where should we buy bread that these may eat?" And of course they say, we couldn't buy enough bread for all these people to eat because it's 5,000 men plus all the women and children. But why does he ask Philip that question? It could just be a coincidence. Philip happened to be standing right there, probability 1 out of 12 that one of the 12 disciples would be standing there. But if it was made up, I don't think John would have made up it being Philip, because there would be no particular reason for it to be. It's not like Philip was the treasurer like Judas was, for example. So, just this kind of mild question. Did he just randomly pick Philip or what? Well, if you go to Luke's gospel, you find it mentioning that this took place somewhere near Bethsaida, a town called Bethsaida. Okay, so what, right? But now you go back to John's gospel and you go to a completely different passage. There's a couple different places. One of them is at the beginning when he's calling his disciples, and one of them is later when some Greeks are wanting to speak to Jesus. And John just kind of mentions those apropos of nothing, not anywhere near the feeding of the 5,000. Philip was from Bethsaida, which was also the town of Peter. So he mentions it very casually in these other places. He doesn't connect it with the feeding of the 5,000. John doesn't mention where the feeding of the 5,000 happened. That's over in Luke. But when you put all these 3 little puzzle pieces together, then it makes sense that Jesus says to Philip, "Hey, Philip, where around here can we buy bread for this crowd to eat?" Because Philip is from that town. And I think that makes sense as an explanation, but it makes sense only in the world of reality back here that lies behind those 3 different passages, and you have to fit those together. It's not the kind of thing that somebody is going to make up, because you know what? A lot of people would even miss it. It's taken years for people to notice it, but once you do notice it, you see that it's evidence of the truth of the narrative.
It's exciting. And your book, Hidden in Plain View, again, I encourage the viewers to pick that up as soon as possible, has many more examples like this. And since reading your book, I'll tell you, as I've been reading through the Old and New Testament, I see similar things throughout both. Even in the Old Testament, I've caught a few. And now that you've kind of opened the door to that, you'll see this behind the text as you read. So this is kind of an exciting book that just opens the door to so much more exploration. I encourage you to pick up Hidden in Plain View as soon as you can at Amazon or wherever you buy books. A great, great book by Dr. Lydia McGrew. Dr. McGrew, thank you so much. And we'll be asking a few more questions in our next videos. Definitely don't miss those.